Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. It's education and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. We are live, and we're coming to you from lifestyleradio.net. Al is away again. It seems as though he's ditched me tonight. No worries, though. I've got the show. So tonight, I'm very excited to introduce my guest. She is from Denver, Colorado. And so I would like to introduce Cindy, and I'm going to say her last name, and I hope I get it right, Sovine Miller. Welcome to the Pace Radio, Cindy. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm just Cindy Sovine now, though. So.
Oh,
yes.
Sorry. So Miller is a part of your company then?
Yes. Sovine Miller is the company. My name is Cindy Sovine.
Awesome.
Great to be here.
Awesome. So here at the Pace Radio Show, I like to start by asking our guests how you came into contact with cannabis first. So if you can let our listeners know how cannabis came into your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a lobbyist in Colorado on state and local and federal issues for most of my career, about 20 years now. And for much of that in the biopharmaceutical and the hospital industries. In 2012, my dad was diagnosed with lymphatic cancer, and after 3 years of battling that and chemo and radiation and surgery, he found himself in the hospital, a vegetable, basically waiting to die. And it was my mom who actually decided to take him out of the hospital and begin to administer cannabis in a tea form that she put through his GI tube. And I watched him get better. I watched it help, but he ended up weaning off of most of the opiates that he was on. He was really able to return to a state of functionality. He ultimately passed away, but not without leaving a strong sense of belief that, he really believed that had he had started cannabis earlier in his regime, that he would be in a different position. And so that was really my first experience with cannabis was watching a system that I helped protect and build from the medical community fail, someone who was sick and dying, and watching this plant give him hope and healing. So that was definitely my first intersection with the with cannabis, and it really changed my trajectory in my career.
And so at the time when your father was sick, what was the laws like in where you were living in terms of cannabis?
We had both medical and recreational access, legal access. 2012, right after he was diagnosed, we legalized recreationally here in Colorado. But just because you have access doesn't mean that you necessarily know what to do. And my dad grew up very conservative out in eastern Colorado. He was a farmer and a rancher, and there still is not a lot of information available for patients who are facing a diagnosis and wondering what to do or how cannabis can be incorporated into an overall treatment program. And so consequently, what happens in a lack of information is that people simply don't do it until they've reached a point where nothing else has worked. And then they're desperate and facing a limited amount of time, and that's when they try it. And so that was what happened to my dad. I think he had made it very clear that if he'd gotten past the stigma in his mind and with what the doctors were telling him and with everything that was happening, that he would have tried this earlier and very likely would have had, more success with it.
And so you had said that after this experience with your father, it had changed your career. In what way?
Well, I guess I felt like I was working for the wrong people. I'd spent a lot of time trying to protect and preserve access to healthcare in my career. And, when I watched what happened with my dad, I became connected with other patients in the medical marijuana community. And I ultimately ended up, after he passed away, letting go all of my clients in the traditional medical space. And I began volunteering in the 2016 now legislative session. I began volunteering for the medical marijuana community. And one of the first bills that I worked on was the bill to allow children who are using medical marijuana for all kinds of disorders, but particularly seizures, in schools to be able to have access to their medicine and their rescue medicines in school. Up until that point, kids that had been bringing patches or tinctures and using them on their body were being kicked out of school, and their moms were having social services called on them. So I ran legislation in 2016 that said, schools, you have to allow the students to have access to their medicine, and you cannot discriminate against them for that. And we ended up getting 90 out of 100 legislators to vote in support of that legislation and got it through. It's called Jack's Law now, named after the boy that really inspired it. But for me, it was I guess I feel very lucky to be one of the few people who are really connected with their calling. And I found my tribe, and I found my people, and I found what I was supposed to be doing with myself in this crazy world. So this is what I've been doing ever since. I out of helping the marijuana and the hemp industries carve and hold their space. And I still do pro bono work for the patient community, helping them move the needle forward in the medical capacities down here in Colorado and trying to advance research. We're adding different conditions. So it's been a crazy few years that has been a part of my cannabis journey.
Wow. And so going back to Jack's Law, previous to that, you had said that there were some issues with social services and the school asking children to stop attending based on their cannabis use. So how is that being perceived now and practiced? Is it like a shift in ideology and practice, or?
Absolutely. I feel like Jack's Law changed a lot of things here in this state. It gave legislators a perspective, people who have never had to deal with a child that has seizures and wonder if they're going to come out of it and wonder what that's going to look like, who've never had to wonder about the long-term side effects of the medications that they're giving their children that are off-label and not even prescribed for kids under 18 years of age. Being able to give them these very real situations and confront them with these parents and these kids who are receiving, demonstrable benefit, not only in gains from no longer having seizures or debilitating side effects from the medications they're on, but actually improving in cognitive function in schools. With 2 years under our belts in Jack's Laws, we've seen implementations of policies districts-wide, and we have kids who have been able to access their medicine for some time. And in fact, this year, they're now running a bill that gives nurses the ability to of their medicine at school as needed.
Oh, sorry, and that was administer the cannabis at school, like the nurses will be able to do that then?
That's right.
And so as it stands now, who administers it then, the child or the teacher?
No, yeah, right now it has to be the parent or the caregiver for the child. So we have the right for the child to have their tincture patches on their body while their transdermal patches while they're on their body. That's a common delivery form for many kids. but there's also often tinctures that need to be administered in the middle of the day. And so now what's happening is parents are having to adjust their work schedule so every day they can take off and come in and give their middle day dose to their child and then get back to work. And so it was actually a newly appointed legislator from the Western Slope here in Colorado that approached us because one of his employees was having to leave and take her lunch hour every day to go administer her son's medication, and she was often late getting back, and there was really nothing, that they were very supportive of her. But he came to the State House and said, why does she have to do that? Why aren't we letting nurses administer? And we said, well, we'd love to change that. So we got a bill going, and we're in the process in the final stages of getting that passed here in Colorado now.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. And so these children, they suffer from a variety of disabilities then? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's been very interesting as we try to move the needle forward on adding new conditions to the medical marijuana program. What's become increasingly apparent is that we're fighting more for access for kids than anything.
Wow.
Because we have access to adult use now recreationally, while it's not to say that it's not important for people to access their doctor and we want them to be able to access a treatment plan that includes CBD and CBGs and CBNs and different strains other than just THC in order to successfully incorporate that with their treatment plan. We also know that there is no way that children under the age of 18 have access to these life-saving forms of medications without having conditions that correspond with it. And so in Colorado in the year 2000, we passed a constitutional amendment that allowed for medical marijuana, and it gave us, I think, an original 9 conditions. That might not be the right number, but I think that's correct. And that includes seizures, chronic pain. There's a number of different ones that were on that. Nice. As it turns out, many of the kids that are on it now currently have seizures, but there are other conditions that we're learning about now too that it's benefiting. And so anyways, the point is in the year 2000 we added the medical marijuana program, and since its inception up until last year we had not added a single condition. So almost 20 years we had not added a single conditional marijuana program until last year when we added PTSD to the list of conditions. Which was a huge win for us. And this year we're seeking to add autism, which is almost entirely about children, and short-term pain, so acute pain, anything that's not considered long-term pain, which is chronic pain, which is about 90 days or more. So anything less than 90 days or would get. Those are the 2 conditions we're working to add in Colorado this year, and both are equally important for very different reasons.
Neat. And so in terms of accessing products in a medicinal sense, so you have dispensaries who can supply children their medication?
Yeah, so the way that it works in Colorado is that you have to have 2 physicians, not one, but 2 physicians, independent physicians, recommend that child would benefit from the use of medical marijuana for whichever condition is being listed. And as I said, since we found this has been here since the year 2000, Colorado has what we call one of the highest medical refugee states. We have families who have flocked here from all over the country to treat their children with cannabis after everything else has failed them. So we have a lot of conversations around kids here. And it's definitely something that makes people uncomfortable. But when you look at the toxicity level of the cannabis plant versus every other substance that we are giving our children today, including Vicodin, including opiates, including SSRIs, it is the least toxic substance that is available to families and parents, frankly, in the world. in terms of an overdose toxicity, in terms of long-term side effects. There is definitely a lot of conversations that need to be happening in the medical community around what cannabis is being used for and how it's being treated, because in Colorado, patients are 10 years ahead of where science is at right now, at the minimum, maybe more, for treating certain conditions with different strains and finding lots of success. So, we are working to keep that conversation going and in the spotlight and transparent so that it's not overlooked as marijuana policy evolves.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to finish. So once two doctors recommend, then a parent can take as their designated caregiver, a parent can take that recommendation to a dispensary and buy the product for their kids.
Oh.
Full circle answer your question.
And so in terms of regulation of those dispensaries, that's a governmental thing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last part?
No, I was just wondering about the dispensaries. Are they governmentally licensed, or how do they work?
Oh, yes. Marijuana is the most heavily regulated industry in the world. So in order for you to operate a dispensary, you have to go through a lot. Criminal background checks, federal background checks. There's a very, very long and expensive process that filters out the vast majority of people who want to get into selling cannabis. You have to comply with all state and federal laws. Compliance is huge. On top of that, there's a whole lot of local ordinances that come in and change things too. So in order to be a dispensary, you cannot sell to a minor, period. Just can't. The only thing that you can do is sell to a minor's caregiver if they have a doctor's recommendation by becoming that caregiver. That essentially assigns their plants, if you will, to their parent or their designated caregiver, who then shops and purchases the product on their behalf.
And then, so in terms of children, what kind of products are we talking about that are available? Like, do you have companies that are specifically geared towards children medicine, or how does that work?
It just really depends on the condition that is being treated. There are a number of brands that are available in the market today that come to mind for seizures that are often sought out by families. Haley's Hope and Charlotte's Web are one of those. There's all different kinds of strains of cannabis. There's CBD only. There's CBD and THC combinations, anything from a 1-to-1 or a 50-50 ratio and on down. There are all kinds of products being developed with CBG and CBN. CBN seems to be really good for sleep and other properties. As we start to nail in on the science and isolate these individual cannabinoids, we're figuring out what conditions people are using to treat themselves with and what successes they're having. And that information is starting to be compiled and replicated throughout. So we're learning a lot here. We're really pushing forward from a science standpoint to get answers and to really hone in on what patients are doing right now.
So in terms of children and cannabis use, I guess, is there studies that are being done in Colorado that are focusing on the benefits of cannabis, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the chicken and the egg problem with that. We are never allowed to crack open a child's developing brain or give them cannabis under federal law and test what's going on. We're just not allowed to do that. It's it's against the law. So we can't test is the answer to your question, right? It's a conundrum and a catch-22. Our laws say that this is a Schedule I drug federally. It's illegal. And therefore, there is no law on the state level that we can say, okay, well, we're going to now test your children. Now that being said, I think there are different ways and things that we're now starting to look at. How can we adjust our laws and protect testing and look at efficacy for these programs. But so far, the research has just been more around toxicity, meaning, is it going to kill you? Are you going to overdose on it? Those types of things. They haven't really begun doing a lot of efficacy testing, except for on seizures, where they're finding there's quite a bit of data, right, especially with kids. There are several studies that have been done in Israel and in the Middle East on autism. We don't allow that kind of research over here in the United States. Those studies, Dr. Raphael Meshulam, who's been a real pioneer, has been involved in this. There's been Dr. Sanjay Gupta. There's been a number of people over there for a very long time studying these issues, particularly as they pertain to children because of their toxicity level compared to all of the substances available in the marketplace. They look at us over in the United States like, what's wrong with you? Why would you rather give your children these other things instead of this much less toxic product? But it's just a difference in culture and in mentality and in education and getting people, caught up with what the science is. We struggle with that every single day here.
Well, so you have a medical background, your career was in Western medicine. So are they allowed to test pharmaceuticals on children that we give to children?
Well, they are, but it's interesting that they don't. I mean, usually these tests are done by the pharmaceutical companies. And of course, this is something that we take head on all the time. Last year in PTSD and this year with autism. And this is what I frequently say to legislators when they ask me this question. I say, we will never have a test that shows what these opiates and benzos are doing to the developing brain of a child. We will never have that. We will never be shown those. We know that Abilify, which is one of the few medicines used to treat autism, is actually being looked at as, and there's class action lawsuits around young men growing breasts from them. Young women gaining weight and developing diabetes and having lots of other issues that present much more radical long-term health effects for these kids than cannabis. And so, from my perspective, I don't care about the outcome. I care about making sure that our kids have options, that our families and our parents have options, and that we keep the pipeline of research going and the dialogue going so that when parents who've done everything that the doctors are told them and everything that they can to help their kids, and now they're being told there's nothing else they can do, well, that they know there's still an option for them. And that's what cannabis continues to be for so many.
So what's the biggest stigma when it comes to cannabis in children? Why is there that ideology, you think?
I think it's just because there's so much misinformation around it being a Schedule I drug. In medical schools, we still don't teach that we have an endocannabinoid system. Every single one of us is born with an endocannabinoid system. And when that goes into deficiency, we actually start to have our body have a harder time fighting off disease and long-term effects of different chronic ailments. This is something that we just choose not to teach people because of the ramifications of the differences in our laws and what's happening and what's legal federally versus what's actually happening in reality and anecdotal in people's everyday lives. That is the conundrum that legalization on a state level has put our federal government in, is that we have states all over now in this experiment who are producing children and patients who are finding relief and ease and relief of suffering from using cannabis, and there's just no denying it. There's no going back from it. There's no pretending that it's not real, that it's not happening, that it doesn't exist as the politics move forward.
So, and you had mentioned about the endocannabinoid system. How does that relate to children and a developing system?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. In Colorado, we frequently have had a study that was thrown out in front of us that talks about harm to the developing brain. But when you dig down into that study, and it's the only one that we've found, at least to this point, what that study does is it doesn't differentiate marijuana use from other illicit drug use, including cocaine, methamphetamines, opioids, and other drugs, right? They just checked marijuana in the box with all of the other drugs, and when they did tests and looked at the developing brain, they found hindrance and a hamperance there, right? So there's not in my mind a study, because I've been looking, right? I have children. I care about what I'm doing here with my time. I have not found a study that has isolated marijuana specifically and found harm. I have not found that study. I would definitely love to see it. You know, I mean, I think then my question would be, what is now let's compare, because this is always from a physician standpoint. They should be, if that physician is worth their salt, they should be asking two questions. Does it alleviate suffering, and does it create harm?
Yeah.
And those are the two questions that they should be asking with every patient every time when making a recommendation, whether it's for an opioid, whether it's for cannabis, whether it's for whatever. And that's all something that's part of this, right? What is the data that shows the long-term health effects of taking those opioids versus cannabis? Whether you're a child or an adult, what does the data say? And that is what I spend a lot of time pushing, because the more that I dug into this rabbit hole, the more that I found that data showed the opposite, that this has a toxicity ratio that blows all of these other substances out of the water, that this has the ability to be harnessed through isolating individual cannabinoids and identifying the different diseases and conditions that they treat, being able to help find delivery methods of consumption that are maybe not smokable, but through tinctures, through edibles, through patches, through roll-ons, all of these other different things that people can use and get their head around so that they can begin to alleviate their suffering with the power of cannabis. That's really what I spend a lot of my time doing, is trying to keep the political environment in the right place and evolving so that these conversations are protected and allowed to happen and evolving with the people of Colorado.
And so in terms of like the politicians, what's your biggest challenge when dealing with them?
Usually I have to say in Colorado, it's really awesome how much these politicians have evolved. I mean, they've been dealing with legalization issues since 2013, something that they just couldn't avoid when the voters chose to allow Colorado to become the first state to offer recreational marijuana, retail marijuana. And so they've really spent a lot of time dealing with the mundane on how regulation works and safety and all of this. So what I've found in my advocacy work is like when I brought Jack's Law to the table, or when the moms showed up with the kids for autism, is that they get to see another side of this plant that actually does real good, right? And it's not just all about how to keep it out of the hands of the wrong people, but actually being able to see what it's doing to benefit. And I think being able to, just help educate and help overcome misinformation through example has been really good. The other thing that's legitimately a challenge is that once they get a hold of the taste of the tax revenue, they want to maximize policies that keep tax revenues flowing. So if medical marijuana, increases and they don't pay taxes, there's that financial conundrum there too. So that's just another dynamic that we continue to keep in mind and talk about and juggle, both with the legislature, the governor's office, and the communities.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I think we'll take a break now, and we're going to hear some music tonight. This song is called The War on Us, and when we return, we'll continue our conversation. This is Pace Radio, live on lifestyle.net.
Good evening. I'm Coulter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
Children are crying, I feel like Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, reg feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reef Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with Tamarawana. Then tune in and catch Pottawa with Russell Barth, who calls himself the world's angriest pothead. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham and joint host Kim Cooper and Alicia Doukhobor. No week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show, featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at lifestyleradio.net or at our sister site, 420radio.ca.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet www.canadiantherapeuticcannabispartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
CTCP now operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CTCP.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
Hello and welcome back. You are listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at lifestyleradio.net. Tonight we are joined by my guest, Cindy Sovine from Denver, Colorado. So, Cindy, I would like to go into your work that you are doing in the wellness sector in Colorado. So what's up with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've always been involved in the healthcare space in my career, and I've always believed in wellness, and that being just a huge part of keeping everybody out of the healthcare delivery system, taking care of yourself. And in Colorado, in 2016, the voters in Denver passed an initiative called I-300, Initiative 300, and what that did was create a limited social use pilot program. And what that means is social use being the idea that you can get together and consume marijuana without fear of being thrown in jail, right? We have legal access. It's legal for you to buy. It's legal for you to have and possess. It's legal for you to consume, but not in public or not in the open. And so right now, that means really the only places that you have are in your own home or in someone else's private home, residence, or otherwise. And so we have, through Initiative 300, the opportunity to address a public health issue that's on the rise, which is where do people who are tourists that come in or patients who are, sick and using this as medicine, where do they consume, whether if they don't want to do it at home around their kids and their pets and their families. And that's where this idea of social use comes into the idea of creating a safe and legal environment for people to consume and have that available to them. So the initiative passed in November of 2016, and the city of Denver, in an extensive stakeholder work group, put together a very long list of regulations. There have now been 2 applicants who have applied. One is a coffee shop that has already received their designation and is opened, and the second is myself. And I put in an application for what is called Utopia, All Natural Wellness Spa and Lounge. And that is a wellness center, essentially, a cannabis wellness center, where we will offer THC-infused massages. We also have CBD versions available for those that don't want THC specifically. We will have a designated consumption area, a designated consumption floor, which will by day be used for ganja yoga and group meditation, healing circles, things along those lines. And then by evening will be social programming. We'll have things like puff and paint and karaoke and comedy. Many of the things that you see that happen around alcohol today are business models that can be replicated in social use settings. And so that is really the new frontier in cannabis. And I think what we're going to be seeing tackled over the next 5 years nationwide as these states continue to legalize cannabis is where are they going to go to consume it, and what does that look like? And so I'm really excited about this. I told you my first entree into cannabis was my dad, and then the bill that I worked with the moms to give access to kids in schools. Well, for me, when I sat there and looked at the fact that we got 90 out of 100 legislators in Colorado to vote in support of putting marijuana back in school, because that's what they did, then I looked at it and said, well, if we can do that, what else can we do? Where else can we put it? And that's really when I was attracted to the idea of social use. And this idea for patients like my dad, when they're facing a diagnosis, where do they go to get informed information about their treatment options and what's available to them? Where do they go to reach other patients who are facing the same diagnosis and access them for support and questions and ideas for what they're doing and how they're titrating and how they're treating themselves? All of these things don't really exist today. And so to create a place of healing where they could go that actually becomes a destination resort for tourists and the local neighborhood alike, really was the goal of what Utopia seeks to bring to the table. So I'm incredibly excited about the opportunity to add healing people to the list of things that I really hope to do with my time on this planet, is help as many people as possible be able to access information around cannabis and what it can do, how it can help, incorporate a different view from a wellness standpoint of what that looks like. Because as we continue to debate legalization, I don't want the medical piece lost. So many people are finding relief from suffering, and we don't want it to lose it to just this idea of people smoking marijuana to get high. It's just not the right lens for all of this, because there are so many people that are finding wellness from it. So, yeah.
So is that something that is occurring that you're noticing in Colorado, that the medical is kind of getting lumped in with rec, or not so much?
Well, our patient count has dwindled. It's gone down in numbers after the legalization of retail marijuana occurred. And that's why I say the fight really actually does kind of come down to the kids, because so many adults have access to the recreational market, and for many, they find it easier to just access cannabis through that than through going through a government list to be able to access it from a medical standpoint. And so our numbers have gone down. The ones that are on the list usually are the ones that are extremely sick, and they need a high number of plants in order to have access the amount of medicine that they need, or their kids that obviously aren't like adults who can just access it through the retail market. And so I spend a lot of time protecting rights for kids and families for them to be able to access it too. And it's a tough issue, as you can imagine. There's a lot of people on both sides.
And so I guess at this point in the game, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to educating people about children and cannabis?
It's really just getting them to take a step back and look at the toxicity levels of all of the options that are available to parents in the market today. And to recognize that most parents do not, in fact, none that I've ever met, do not come to cannabis by choice. They come to it when everything else has failed them and their doctors don't have any other ideas. And then they find out that it actually helps their child. Not only do they stop having seizures, do they stop having aggressive behaviors toward themselves and others, do they stop exhibiting many of the symptoms that they are finding, but then they start end up with cognitive gains because they're actually able to sit through school and learn and have that brain development that they weren't able to have anymore because their body was so busy fighting the disease or fighting the symptoms of the seizures or all of these things. And so it's really just more about educate yourself. Really, it may not be comfortable, but many years ago we thought the world was flat, and we all had to go through the discomfort of coming to terms with the reality that the world is not in fact flat, right? So at some point we have to look at the data. We have to look at the data, and then we have to ask ourselves, once confronted with that data, is it really so bad that we're talking about offering one of the least toxic substances available on the market to children in lieu of the deaths that are occurring from opioids, in lieu of the side effects that are occurring for kids who are taking medications that were never meant to be taken by people under the age of 18? I think that question actually has already been settled when you look at the families and the kids that are using this and you see the results for yourself. But as far as the doctors are concerned, they still need convincing. So we need to deschedule marijuana in our country. That's what needs to happen. We need to move forward with allowing banking and research for condition-specific, medical efficacy of cannabis treatment and, begin to make gains in some of these things. And until that happens, I'm hoping that, people like us will still be putting up the good fight and moving the needle forward and forcing the tough conversations to be had.
And I'll take a step back. You had said something about banking. Is that an issue in Colorado?
Well, it is in every state, actually, not just Colorado, because we don't treat marijuana businesses like other businesses in the rest of the country. They're not allowed basic tax deductions. There's not federal protections for banks who loan or work with marijuana businesses. Therefore, marijuana businesses can't get traditional loans. Many of them can't even operate bank accounts. They often get closed down if they have the word marijuana or cannabis in them. They face many different challenges. And so descheduling marijuana and allowing for legal banking pathways will do a lot to open up research, legitimacy, all of these things. And so, on a much broader level, I think everyone involved in the cannabis movement is really hoping that that's the big goal and that's what needs to happen. Simply on the basis of the toxicity level of it alone, it does not belong as a Schedule I drug. It just, the research is not there to justify it being a Schedule I drug, which means no medicinal value, highly toxic, and highly addictive. So these are things that, we just need to be reevaluating as adults. What we were told 60 years ago doesn't come into line with what's happening today. And it's time that we re-examine that conversation. It's just where we're at.
And so in terms of legalization in Colorado, it has occurred, but it seems to me that there's all of these underlying issues that are still occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still, in some ways, we're still working through the social justice pieces of it. We're still, in some areas of our state, taking people's children away for the use of marijuana. Our child welfare laws need to come up to speed with where things are at. We're still dealing with many of the effects because it is still illegal at the federal level. So it's this uneasy conflict with federal law that is going to continue until action is taken on the federal level.
And so is there any foreseeable, bills in place that will do that, or not so much?
Well, yeah, there was discussion not more than a week ago of Senator Cory Gardner and the president talking about, them moving forward to deschedule marijuana and looking at banking. Now, those conversations have to actually manifest into bills that need to move forward, and I think that many are hopeful and skeptic at the same time that process will happen. But those conversations are very optimistic. I think it's the first that anybody's heard of Sessions saying anything of that like. Not Sessions, Trump saying anything of that like since he's been in office. So it's at least showing dialogue and movement on the issue. I look forward to the next step in that conversation and holding them accountable to what they're saying they're going to do.
Okay, and in terms of your political work, where's that going? What do you foresee that you'll be doing in the next little while?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that Utopia, my wellness spa, is a political animal in and of itself. I think that social use is the new frontier, and I'll be spending a lot of time in that effort. My headquarters are going to be a block away from the Capitol. And I hope to be bringing dignitaries in from all over the world to show them what a properly regulated social use business looks like when it's successful. And then I aim to help other people open these across the country so that they can continue to bring people together. In my opinion, social use is the quickest path to normalization, because when people can get together and consume without fear of going to jail, I think that, great things can happen. And I think that we need to be embracing that and providing safe environments, just like we do for alcohol, just like we do for, for people who like wine and beer or hard liquor. They can go to bars, they can go to restaurants, they can go to concerts, they can go to any number of social activities where they can meet and be with people, but yet in cannabis you are still relegated into the dark. So that is what social use aims to change. is bringing it into the light and making it safe and regulated so that it gives people a place to consume out of public eye and into private and operating legal business spaces. So that is definitely where I see my next steps. And making sure that the kids still have access, of course.
Awesome. And so in terms of your wellness center, that would be pursuant to like regulations and stuff like that are in place, or is that what you're asking for? I'm not really clear on that.
Yeah, it's confusing. So I-300, which was the Denver voter initiative that passed, is open and accepting applications. And assuming that I go through the process and I'm able to get my license within the next few weeks, I think that, my goal is to help make Denver look good for implementing this properly, for doing the stakeholder work, for being responsible regulators that were open to what the voters asked them to do, and then to help other local governments, cities, towns, municipalities, even states, who are looking at, hey, we're dealing with these same issues, we need solutions, what are you guys doing? And be able to help them with, well, here's what Denver's done, here's what our language looks like, here's how it's working out here. Come on in and take a tour and visit, and we can help you, carve that model into your jurisdiction or the next place or the next place. So it's going to take them being able to see it and understand it and view it from a lens of what it is and not this, this idea of an opium den or something that has still a lot of stigma to it, is the best way to put it.
And so you feel that by virtue of having one and showing the society basically that, these like lounges and wellness centers are very much needed, that'll set the precedent for everyone else to kind of follow suit. I like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I am up to now.
That's really neat. And so in terms of like food products, is that something that you'll be providing at your place as well, or is that a different products? Like that's what I'm asking. Is it just single serve, or can you also sell products? Is that a fine line? How does that work?
Yeah, no, there is no on-site sales, so it's bring your own consumption. We'll have prepackaged food. It will not be infused, though we are looking to serve CBD-infused lattes and kombuchas, but we will not have, any infused foods or anything on site, just simply based on the regulations that are in existence today from the city. And yeah, we have standard operating procedures and training modules in place to identify and measure intoxication, safe ride home programs in place. We've really spent a lot of time thinking about the challenges and complications and things that need to be worked through in order to make this done successfully. And we're really looking forward to working with the city of Denver on implementing all of these plans.
Awesome. And so as it stands now, is there other places that are like currently offering this, or it just becomes legal now? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I mentioned there's only 2 applicants. I'm one of them that have applied for this particular permit. The other one is in Denver, and it is a coffee shop. They actually do already have their permit, and they've been open for a couple of months now.
Oh. And so how do you like that? Like, you think that that's going good? They're providing a good service? That's something that's kind of impressive to you, yeah?
I think it's all pioneering. I mean, it takes a lot of gumption to go against what, I guess society has taught us for so many years is the right way to think about this or the right way to believe. And, people who, like me, have been confronted by life for lack of better way to put it, that has realigned us and set us on mission to help people understand, at least from our experience, where things have been misrepresented and, essentially where they're having their options withheld from them to be able to start to push that forward. So, yeah, I mean, I see a world where we see little social villages popping up around dispensaries where you get your product and then you go, well, do I want to go to the coffee shop? Do I want to go to the spa? Do I want to go to the movie theater? Where do we go today? And having these businesses pop up around these places will provide a lot of different public health solutions in terms of where do people go to consume, but also provide opportunities to monitor intoxication and to ensure safety of those that don't want to be exposed to it by making sure that it's not visible from the street, that it's, ventilated properly, all of these things. So.
Awesome. All right. And so our listeners, if they wanted to contact you, where should they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I feel like right now the best thing to do for lobbying business, if you're interested in consulting with me or working with me from a government relations standpoint or from a social use standpoint, the best way to reach me is through my email, and that is Cindy, CINDY, at SovineConsulting.com. That's SOVINE, consulting, CONSULTING.com. That Cindy at Sovine.com is the quickest way to find me for the consulting business. For the spa, check out my website at www.utopiawellnesslounge.com, and you can sign up to learn for updates and for more information on when we open and the types of products and services that we'll be offering.
Awesome. And so when's the projected open date?
We are hoping July.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Yes,
awesome.
That is.
And so, go ahead.
Oh, no, that is the plan.
Okay, cool. And so we'll look forward to seeing you obviously advertise on Facebook when your spa is opening, and so our listeners can come on down and see you.
Yeah, absolutely. On Facebook.com, you can get me at Utopia All Natural Wellness Spa and Lounge.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me and let us know what you're doing in the cannabis world. That's so awesome. Your work is much needed, and I'm so impressed by the cannabis and kids thing. I'm going to start doing some research into that because I'm really interested in finding out how Canada does that. So thank you so much for sharing all of your information with us, and I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you.
No worries. You take care. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Have a great one. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, this is Cheech.
And this is Chong.
And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
What is it?
Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time.
420 Radio?
Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Call it war on drugs, but it's a war on us. You're taking him away. Please don't take my daddy to jail. My brother, my sister, my mother. Please don't take him to jail.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on lifestyleradio.ca.
In 2017, the Canadian government announced that although recreational cannabis would be federally legal, its distribution and sale would be determined by individual provinces. Later that fall, the province of Ontario announced its proposed legal framework, that a subsidiary of the LCBO be the sole proprietor of cannabis in our province, essentially creating a one-party monopoly. This government-controlled monopoly could result in longer wait times, supply issues, and insufficient experience due to lack of proper consultation with the pre-existing industry. The provincial government believes this framework will restrict access to children and help eliminate the black market, but this proposed action will only push illicit suppliers further underground. Meanwhile, over the past 2 decades, there's been a growing industry of intelligent, savvy, and responsible cannabis entrepreneurs who have been working hard to provide access and education around the medicinal, therapeutic, and recreational uses of cannabis. We are Sensible Ontario. We're not new, but we're excited to meet you. Visit our website now and donate to become a part of Making Sense.
If you'd like to learn more about Sensible Ontario, go to sensibleontario.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Three generations of hemp, cannabis, marijuana prohibition greatly contribute to planetary deforestation, pollution, and ozone destruction. Let hemp compete in construction, paper, fiber, fuel, nutritional, and pharmaceutical corporations. Cannabis has been safe, efficient medicine for many illnesses throughout all generations and for natural relaxation. Still, we spend hundreds of billions of dollars and throw away
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.